The Marinade.
There's no O in Marinade. Let's try it one more time. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
The Marinade.
Marinade.
Bone marinade.
That's
The Marinade.
The Marinade. With Jason Earle. Welcome to The Marinade, a free-flowing conversation about the creative process with creative people. This is episode 144, and our guest for the second time is Van Plating. Van is a singer, songwriter, and virtuoso violin player from Florida whose latest record, Orange Blossom Child, is a personal examination of the place that raised her. We caught up at Van Plating's beautiful home in Central Florida with our bellies full of Indian food and glasses filled with rum. Trigger warning, everybody, Van opened up about a near-death experience she had a few years ago. It is a harrowing story, and I don't want anyone to be caught off guard by the details. Y'all, I am so grateful for Van's music, for the work that she produces, and also for her friendship. It is my great honor to bring you my conversation with Van Plating.
They're gonna kill you anyway.
There we go.
Is this the first barefoot interview?
This is the first barefoot interview, I think. Some folks have come over to the house in their sock feet.
Okay.
But I think this is the first time I've ever had.
So even Langhorne Slim wore shoes.
Did Langhorne Slim wear yeah, Langhorne Slim wore shoes.
Right.
Yeah. All right. I think we're pretty good. It just kind of like yeah. All right.
All right.
My friend, I am so grateful to be back here in your backyard, your beautiful backyard. Once again in Lakeland, holding this beautiful physical copy of your beautiful record.
Yay.
I am so proud of you and
Thank you so much.
Grateful to be your friend and a fan, your fan, and for the opportunity to get to live with these songs a little bit. And I'm so excited to dive into them because you have made an incredible record.
Oh, thank you, my friend. And thank you for having me back and coming back here so I can come back.
There's no better setting for us to talk about Orange Blossom Child than your backyard, which is so Florida. And you can hear the sounds. Folks can probably hear the sounds in the background. This is what it feels like here. This is what it sounds like here. And you've captured that feeling on this record so beautifully. And I want to just briefly gush a little bit more about it before we really dive in.
Twist my arm.
Because, I mean, I think I said something similar the last time we talked, which was that I had really enjoyed your debut solo record. I had then thought that the next record was a huge step up. And I feel like this is a leap.
Thank you.
Like this is and of course I don't mean that to in any way disparage the other records that I love.
Of course not.
But just to say, like,
we hope to grow.
Buddy, you've grown.
Thank you.
I mean,
thank you.
I mean, it is, I think, and it's apparent from the very first moment, I mean, the title track leads off the record, and you paint this picture that I mentioned something on Twitter the other day about how you have this ability to take something so specific, driving down OBT in your daddy's Cherokee, and that moment is so vivid in my mind, in part because I drive down Orange Blossom Trail all the time, right? But also the ability you have to take that specific thing and make it universal, because this is such a Florida record in so many ways, and it could feel exclusive if not done the right way.
Right.
But it most certainly is done the right way, and as a result has this universality to it.
Thank you so much.
Can you talk about that? Like how conscious you are when you're making a record that's so place driven and so themed, but that is also going to and needing to connect with people from all over the world.
So you said a leap, and what does a leap feel like? Taking a big, scary, huge, massive, you don't know if you're gonna land on your feet or not kind of leap, and that is 100% what making this felt like. At the same time, this is my first offering to the world that is solely mine, my vision. I produced it, I pushed all the computer buttons, and because of that, and then all the writing, there are no co-writes on this album. That's new for me.
That's interesting, yeah.
And I love to co-write.
Yeah.
That's just not what this was supposed to be, though.
Yeah.
That just didn't happen this time. I was supposed to make this myself. And so I think that there's something about opening oneself up on a really deep level. Our experiences of joy and pain, adolescence, change, feeling like a misfit, that moment of before you become an adult and you're so preoccupied with forward movement and you're really present. I think most of us have been teenagers in the car and felt completely present in the moment. At least if you're my age, you have, because I didn't have a smartphone talking to me. I didn't have, so most of us have had some sort of moment that you can connect the feelings with, and then the locale, because it's personal. I think that's why Bruce Springsteen's songs and Tom Petty's songs hit home, because they use street names, right? They use specific verbiage about the countryside and things like that. But the feelings that are behind it and the experiences that are happening in those locations have happened to most of us if we're honest with ourselves. And I think that's where you can kind of get that universality. It also doesn't hurt if you can make it a little catchy and singable.
Okay, so there are a couple of things. Thank you for that beautiful segue, because that first song I just mentioned, right, the title track.
Yes.
It's referencing specifically the year 96, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
And so we are the same age, and so 96, we're in high school.
Yep.
And just before that is when I got my very first CD with my own money. Right,
oh man, what was it?
It was Winona Judd's solo record. And so yesterday, I was listening to your record, and then I listened to the new Turnpike Troubadours record, kind of back to back.
I haven't listened to that one yet.
It's good. It's really good. But a couple things stood out to me, because I had your CD out, right?
Right.
So I'm looking at the physical copy, which I'm holding in my hands right now. And the aesthetic, and then also as I was listening to the songs, reminded me so much of that Winona record and a lot of the records that I attached to at that time, in that these are great songs that are in fact incredibly catchy, that do beg to be sung at the top of your lungs, that do beg the windows rolled down. But it isn't a throwback to the 90s, right? Like sonically it's not a throwback.
Right.
And yet it just hit me really hard last night as I was looking at the CD and listening to it and thinking about how aesthetically this looks like a modern version of that Winona record. And it's not at all the same thing, but there is a feeling of like, this is really quality. And at the same time, it's really, because I think sometimes what has happened in intervening years is that you got one or the other.
Yes.
You got
100%.
that it was gonna be something that I feel like anybody could listen to, or you got something that was of really high quality. Right. And there's been just so much time that it feels like we've had those things and chasing down how do you make something that is incredibly catchy, and begs to be sung along, but also is of such high quality lyrically and musically. Yeah. How aware are you when you're making the record?
I'm OCD to the everything, like with what you see, the visual of the CD, the color choices, the photography that was chosen, the vibe, the aesthetic was taken from a photo I found of Springsteen from the 70s.
Oh, cool.
By Lynn Goldsmith, that I'd never seen before. And he was in this biker jacket, and against this pink background. And I loved the attitude of that. And, I'm going to brazenly say, like, I hope as I grow as an artist, like, I really do believe in my art enough that I want it to become part of the modern lexicon of songs. I don't know if that will happen. Sure. But if I aim lower than that, I'm not aiming for lower than that. I'm aiming for way up, the absolute best art I can make. And I think part of it is... I jokingly said OCD, but that is true. Yeah. Growing up as a trained violinist, like, that paid for my college. Like, I'm obsessive to a degree that I don't even think I could express to you how intensely I process every sound that went into this. And it wasn't from a place of anxiety. It's deep, immense delight. Inspiration, discovery. I wanted to take sounds that I grew up with, sounds that resonated with me, specifically that related to what I was talking about. And then the same thing with the lyrics. Like, instead of using the word bird, I'm using kite bird or whippoorwill or heron. All of that stuff was super intentional to me. And I didn't know if it was going to work. I didn't know if it was going to work, but I knew that I had to try the very best that I could and not cop out in any way. And I don't even think I know how to do that. Like, sometimes I wish I could take a step back when I'm making something and be like, okay, I just need to be settled with that. There's no moment on this album that I settled for anything. Not on any part, not on any lyric, and it's the best thing that I've ever made, and I hope I keep growing.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about growth and a little bit about, so I want to dive into the fact that, you said earlier, you talked about the fact that there's no co-writes. Right. And that you really like that. We talked earlier off mic about how you really enjoy the collaborative process.
I do.
You've got, it will stand out to folks immediately, a ton of talent on this record. Yes. Right? There's a ton of folks on this record singing with you, playing with you.
They're all incredible. Yes.
People that we've been listening to for a long time. And yet, it is a Van Plating record.
Yes, it is. 100%.
It's you. How do you... what does that balance look like? Because you're talking about, like, Elizabeth Cook, right?
I know. I still can't believe she's on it. Yeah. I'm going to do that a lot in this conversation.
Yeah. Reckless Kelly.
God.
You know, like...
Yes.
There's all these folks that, like... These are huge people in the world that we...
Right.
The spaces
people I've
that
listened
we
to for years.
For 20 years, some of them,
I
right?
mean, like, what?
Or more, right?
Yeah.
I would imagine. And so... how does that, like, how did you strike that balance to say, like, I'm going to have someone with the personality and chops of an Elizabeth Cook on my record, and yet it's going to be me?
I just didn't think about it. You know, what's incredible about every single artist who played on the sessions or every single artist who's featured, and there's a lot of them. I think there's nine features, which is crazy and awesome. And that's me. And I hope I get to keep doing that. I want to keep collaborating. But I think that what I have found with these people who are at this level of artistry is they come in, and if they love the song, they just play to the song, and they do it so beautifully. Elizabeth Cook came in. She came up with her, you know, that's her harmony part. I didn't write any parts. She had the song. She learned the song through the lyrics, through her own part. That awesome little tag at the end, the "Take Me Back," that part, that was all her idea. And I saw that over and over. These people brought their own thing to it. Now, I think that something that does kind of make me different as a producer, at least from people I've worked with. It doesn't mean that this is like a rare unicorn trait, but when I booked people, whether it was someone who's going to play drums or guitar or whatever, I would say, here are the references. This is the direction. Then they would send me a few different things. I didn't nitpick. I knew that I could create arrangements with anything. So there was no like anxiety or like fear as part of that. I felt like my biggest hurdle was just the time it takes to edit things, right?
Yeah.
But as far as that, the creative aspect of that and bringing in these heavy hitters and feeling like it was 100% intimidating and overwhelming to be getting files from, you know, Cody and Willie Braun and from Elizabeth Cook, and, you know, the list just goes on and on and on. You know, it was almost more scary to get yeses from those people than it was to get the files and put them into the session, you know. But my gosh, like Crystal Bowersox freaking elevated the whole song. You know, they all did. Yeah. Every single one of them. But I just didn't think about it. I didn't think about who they were so much as that their voice and their feel. That's the other thing. If you, I'm getting excited, so I'm starting to talk fast. I'll try to slow down.
You sound great, and I'm excited too.
So I think part of it too is sending people songs that, like, doing your best to send people songs that would be in their wheelhouse anyway. You know? So like Reckless is on the most Red Dirt sounding song of the album. And it's in a key that this is how OCD I am, Jason. Before we invited anybody to sing on something, I went and I would go to their catalog and I checked for their keys to see what keys they sing in.
Interesting.
And,
wait, what do you mean? So you listen and then
listen to their songs, pick it out, figure out what key they're in, and if the song I was thinking about was not going to be within that wheelhouse, I would be like, oh, that's a bad choice for them. Let's think about something else. Oh, wow. So, you know, you do all this legwork ahead of time, and it was the same with instrumentalists. I didn't just reach out to people who I knew were good. It was more about, what is this song going to be? What is this player's vibe already? If you play to people's strengths, man. Yeah. And that's what I tried to do with this, you know. It made my life easier. And then I just shaped it all. I got it all back. And then I just could cut and paste and edit and move and shift. And the mixing engineer was amazing because he listened to everything I wanted to do with it. And then he took his own creativity to it. And that's why it sounds like me.
Yeah. Well, and baked into that also is just some things that we talked about last time, but that are worth revisiting, and that is two things. One is the incredible work ethic that you have and the amount of work that you put into your art, and then two is something that we highlighted last time about your ability, your leadership ability.
Thank you.
Your ability to be the helm of a project. It makes a lot of sense to me that you had all these heavyweights here and that you were able to, it doesn't sound like a them. It sounds like they are part of you. Right. You all have formed like Voltron to be, right?
Yeah.
And
all 32 of them.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, it's a really chaotic episode of children's classic cartoon Voltron.
Yes.
To make more 90s references. But that, again, highlights both the amount of work that
Mm-hmm.
that you put into these things,
Mhm.
and you can hear it in the quality
Thank
of this
you.
record, but then also just your ability to be a leader of people.
Thank you so much. That means a lot.
You're welcome. I'd like to dive into before we get into the record.
Yeah.
I mean the songs specifically, which I want to do. You said something a second ago about the idea of like, I forget the exact word you used, but you were kind of talking about how like, you know, almost an anxiety about reaching out to some of these
Right.
folks, right?
Right.
Can we unpack that a little bit too? Like,
Yes. Yes. I think that a lot of us so if I'm going to talk about myself as an artist who's been solidly in the emerging category for several years,
right.
it can be very scary to try and grow past that. And in order to grow, anybody who's making art would love for it to be sustainable. I don't
Yeah.
need to make a lot of money, but I
Yeah.
would love to be able to keep growing, to have a career that sustains itself, so then I can go also and like bring people along with me, help them make art, help them learn how to, grow and be part of, hopefully impacting our culture in a beautiful, empathetic way. But, it's scary because it would have been very easy for me to make this whole record by myself with maybe one or two other people playing on it.
Mm-hmm.
The harder
And it still
thing-
would have sounded great.
And it still would have sounded great, but it wouldn't have been this.
Right.
And it's scary when you're a nobody from Florida,
Mm-hmm.
sending emails and DMs and requests to people you've never met who don't owe you a damn thing. And you're sitting here and it's all basically on the strength of either the mutual connection that you have with the person that gave you their contact,
Mm-hmm.
or it's on the strength of the song.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times for people who are so busy, it's both.
Yep.
And so, yeah, it was terrifying. I didn't breathe for a week after my friend sent the email with the song to Reckless Kelly. I was like, I didn't even care about having someone huge on the album until I sent the email. And then all of a sudden, like, I can't breathe. I can't
Yeah.
sleep. It's all, I'm
Yeah,
like
yeah.
refreshing my inbox constantly,
Yeah.
But I think that,
That's a funny phenomenon. I
Right?
100% know what you mean. And yeah.
like, you're totally fine, but then you
Yeah.
make the ask.
Yeah,
Then
yeah.
you make the
Yeah.
reach out. And, at no point in time during this process did any single person who collaborated with me owe me anything. Like, they didn't have to say yes to this.
Right.
I paid everybody, but like, not like gajillions of dollars. They did it because they wanted to. And the anxiety never went away of the ask.
Uh-huh.
But it did turn from like kind of fearful, like, oh my gosh, is anyone going to say yes? To the anxiety became, oh my gosh, everyone said yes. What am I going
Yeah.
What am I going to do now? Everyone said yes.
Yeah.
And, what will people think of me because I put everybody on here,
Uh-huh.
right? And then I had to be like, oh, shut up, Van.
Yeah, yeah.
That's not what it's about. It's about making cool shit
Yeah.
that matters.
Yeah.
Bring everybody. Let's do it,
Well, absolutely, and I think it'd be helpful for folks listening. I know that it looks different with my podcast, but it's definitely, I do a lot of asking.
Mm-hmm.
People do a lot of asking to me,
Right.
and and that's really interesting because I think, like, for example, on the podcast end of it, I can't say yes to everything.
Right.
Right.
Right. Of course. Yeah.
And sometimes I hear something and I'm not sure if it makes, like, I'm not sure if it's the right fit for
Right.
the Marinade, even
Right.
though it may be very good.
Right.
Sometimes it doesn't hit me right.
Right.
And I don't,
Right.
and then I have to navigate what am I going to say about this? How do
Right.
I respond to this? Like, what have you learned through this process or even leading up to
Yeah.
this process about asking that maybe would be helpful for folks out there who are emerging, who are making things, who are trying to figure out how do I make that ask?
I think just know that most people really are kinder than you would ever realize.
Mm-hmm.
Most people who are, the people you look up to that are a stage beyond you, or 2 or 5 or however many stages beyond you, like, they're human beings who have built a career just like you're trying to do right now.
Yeah.
And if you come humbly and aren't an asshole and you're kind, oh my gosh, the kindness you tend to get, like, overall, like, I mean, it is shocked me, because I would have thought, hey, I'm a nobody really knows my name, not at that level.
Yeah, yeah,
not at the
right.
level we're talking about, where people have teams that you coordinate with,
Yeah.
all that stuff.
Yeah.
I just figured, I'm nobody, I don't matter, they're gonna say no. And my heart was just completely changed toward the power of giving them the chance to say yes to someone. Do you know why Elizabeth Cook said yes to me? She was paying it forward because I believe it was Patty Griffin. I'm going to double check myself after this.
Okay.
But said yes to her
Wow.
to sing on her record.
Wow.
And she said, you know what? This is my chance. She said that to me in an email. She said,
Wow.
are you kidding? Patty Griffin did this for me. If it's not Patty, I'm sorry. I'm going to double check.
Patty Griffin was on one of her records. I'm
Okay.
like 90% sure.
She said she did it for me when I was a nobody.
Yeah.
The least I can do
Exodus,
is do
I
this for
think.
you. I think you're right.
I don't know.
I feel
We'll look it up
terrible that
later.
I'm not
I know
enough
we're
of a
spending way
historian.
too much time on this that we can look up later and I can correct in
Okay,
post.
cool.
But the point being, like, that's huge.
But she remembered that
Yeah.
moment of being vulnerable and making an ass that scared her, and she said, you know what, I'm going to say yes. And so I would also say to other people who listen who aren't teeny indie artists trying to break from an impossible state to break a career from, it's not impossible. It's just hard, but we do hard things. I would also say to more influential people who are listening, who I know do listen to your show, is never forget the power of your yes to change the trajectory of someone else's life.
Yeah.
It's important not to forget that. The impact that we have when we take a minute and say yes to someone just because we can.
Mm-hmm.
It has a huge, huge, huge long-standing impact, and these people's yeses, hopefully, if this album continues to grow like I think it might,
Yeah.
it's going to enable me to say yes more,
Mm-hmm.
and that's incredible. What a
Mhm.
gift.
I agree with you. This album's going to continue to grow. I feel like I'm in a position where I can make an even stronger statement, which is we can't predict, right? We don't know who's going to hear or what, but I
Right.
know that it's undeniable. I know
Thank
that it's undeniably a great record, and I know that it is one people need to hear.
Thank you.
And you're already seeing, in terms of the tangible stuff,
Yeah.
right? You're already
Yeah.
seeing an uptick,
Big time.
right? So what's your headspace like right
Oh,
now?
It's so weird. It's so weird. So The Hard Way, the second single,
Which is going to be my next question. Here we go.
it hit 16,000 streams in a week. And for an independent artist who doesn't have a bankroll paying for streams, there's no paid follows, none of that. That's insane. It's a small number to some people, but that's a huge number when you're on your own.
Yeah.
It's huge. And The Heron, the one with Elizabeth Cook, crossed 12,000 streams. And this is just Spotify,
Yeah.
but that is it's a big
It's
one.
a big one, yeah.
That's a big one.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, unfortunately. But yeah, so just that and the responses, the listener growth, I think my, to talk nerd for a minute, my release engagement for this is it's something like 20% of my followers have already engaged with it.
Oh, wow.
You're considered doing really good if you get like 5% of your people engaging with it.
Wow.
So I'm in a weird headspace because I almost am so used to like nose to the grindstone that for something to be doing well, I'm like so thrilled. It's going to take me a while to like to process that the hope that I had was that these songs would hit people's hearts,
Yeah.
and that they would, like our favorite songs, they come and they stay.
Yeah.
And that was my hope with this. And it's too soon, to know long term what that will do. But my gosh, it sure seems like something different. There's something very different this time.
Yeah.
I'm trying to catch up to it in my head.
Well, it's helpful, I think, to mention here, we haven't even discussed the fact that the record's not out yet. that we've got singles out, but the whole record is not out yet, and that's already where you are. It's a really interesting time for you, right? That the music's finally out there. You've put so much time and effort into these songs. A few folks have had a chance to hear them, but the public at large has not had a chance to hear the record yet. As we're having this conversation, and you're thinking through what it looks like,
right?
And that is a tenuous space to live in.
It's weird,
but it's exciting because what I feel from you, and please, of course, correct me if this isn't accurate, but I feel from you is a sense that that you do recognize how much growth you've made.
Yes, 100%.
And that it's not just the external validation of that, but that you internally feel it.
Yes.
And it's being reflected in the external validation.
Yes.
Which is feels
this
like
is
never
crazy.
happens.
I'm very confused.
This is not a thing. I feel like you're the first person maybe to do. I don't know.
Is my work starting to work? I don't know.
I think that's incredible. You mentioned the hard way, and tough one to talk about, but I want to dive into it.
Okay, let's do it.
Because I think this is such a great example. That the whole record's full of songs that are bangers with a whole lot of complexity to them.
Right.
And this one is a perfect.
I'm going to use that as a quote from you.
Yeah, that's fine. Please do. Put that one on your press materials. Bangers with complexity. But that particular song is a deeply personal song.
Yes, it is.
And I think if folks don't know the backstory, that you could, if you're not paying close enough attention, you could just be like, oh, this is a banger.
Right.
Which it is.
Right.
But today I was looking at the lyrics on the page, having known the story, and I was just like, Jesus Christ. It was just to put something out like that. And you've talked about this before, but to put it out in that way.
In a song. Permanently.
But it's out there.
Yeah.
Can you talk about, tell us the story, and then as much as you feel comfortable saying here, and then sort of how you came to the place of saying, I'm not only going to write this song, but I'm going to put it out here on my record.
That song took me 8 years to be ready to write it. And I wrote that song sitting in the same spot that I'm sitting in, staring at you right now.
Wow.
I'll try to tell the story in the most concise way I can, so I don't take forever. But in 2015, I was here on our back patio, which you all can't see, but it's the same place where I'm sitting now talking to Jason. And I was nursing our daughter, Rory, and I felt this stabbing pain so bad that I handed the baby to my husband, Jack, and I went inside and I said, I'm just gonna lay down for a minute. I'm sure I'm fine. And I wasn't fine, but I didn't know that. I began to bleed heavily, and that's when I suddenly started thinking, oh my gosh, am I miscarrying? I had miscarried before. I miscarried my first pregnancy.
Okay.
And it was just a very, very intense pain. I was in a space of we have 3 tiny children. Rory was still an infant. Maybe she was 8 months old-ish, something like that. I had no signs of pregnancy, none. But that's what I started thinking. I thought, I must be miscarrying. That must be what's happening. Call the hospital. And they just talk you through, without seeing me, they said, well, if you've miscarried before, if you come in, it's really just, we're going to watch you. You won't be as comfortable as you are at home, so it's up to you. So I stayed home, not knowing that my left fallopian tube had fully ruptured. I was a full trimester pregnant. So it was brutal. But I didn't know that at the time. I was just in a ton of dizzying pain. And I thought, well, it'll start to go away. I was awake, which is one of the reasons that this went on for days, basically. But I was conscious. Usually when you rupture a fallopian tube like I did, it's an ectopic pregnancy. Usually you bleed internally, you pass out, and if you don't get medical attention right away, you die. That's just what happens.
Yeah.
I somehow was conscious. I was in excruciating pain, but I was conscious. And that, I think, threw the medical professionals and didn't make it seem like as much of an emergency as we later found out it definitely was.
Yeah.
So this happened on a weekend. I kept getting weaker and weaker, you know. We called the doctor the weekend line. They said, we'll come in on Monday and we'll see what's going on with you. Again, I was conscious.
Yeah, yeah.
So they figured she's probably lost a lot of blood. Maybe she's anemic. You know, we'll take a look and see what's going on.
Yeah.
So I came in. They, you know, took blood to test whether or not I was pregnant. And they said, come back in 24 hours. This whole time, days are going by. I was bleeding internally that whole time.
That's wild.
Finally, the second day I went in for them to check my pregnancy hormones, I ran into my doctor in the hallway. He took one look at me and said, what's going on? What's wrong with you? And why aren't you at the hospital? You look awful. Rushed me to an ultrasound. No baby. And that's when he immediately knew. And they told me to come home, say goodbye to my children, because it had been so long. This was day 5. And I asked the nurse, I remember I was on the phone with the nurse, and I said, well, what are my chances? And she said, honey, it's been so long, I can't tell you. I'm so sorry. Hug your children and come straight to the hospital. So the complexity of not knowing you were pregnant, right? Then thinking you're, okay, what's even happening? So I'm losing pregnancy. No, I'm not just that. I'm dying. I've been dying for 5 days and I had no idea. Of course, we went straight to the hospital, and thank God they operated on me, and the doctor came out and saw us afterwards, and she said she'd not ever seen anything quite like that. I had lost 3 liters of blood inside my abdomen. My abdomen was just full of blood. She said the thing that had saved my life was a tiny little blood clot over an artery.
Whoa.
And so there I was. I just... Life will really knock you down, right?
Yeah. But not like that.
Dude. Yeah. And I just remember, you know, I wasn't really scared in the moment at all. That's part of who I am. I just don't, that's not my default. I don't know why. A therapist could probably unpack that. I wasn't afraid really of anything. I was sad. I was terribly sad that it was happening in the moment. My heart was just, I'm thinking about my husband. I'm thinking about if I don't wake up, what does that mean for my babies? All of those things, but I wasn't afraid.
Yeah.
So after great timing. I might have to put her inside.
Hey.
Shiloh, come here.
Hey, we want you to be out here with us. Come here.
Come on, it's okay.
Come here.
It's okay.
Hey, be quiet, baby girl.
Come on.
We want you to be out here.
She's like, someone is at the perimeter.
It's okay.
Come here.
Come here. Thank you, but it's okay. Hi, baby. Yeah, it's okay.
You can sit down. Come
Yeah, thank you. Oh, that was a burp.
Okay.
There you go, sweet girl. Thank you.
So I wake up. The doctor comes to see you. And, you know, medical professionals, it's also like, it's cut and dry in some ways because it has to be, you know.
Yeah.
So she sat down on the end of my bed. I knew, you know, and spoke to me and told me, like, just the gravity of what the situation had been.
Yeah.
That they weren't lying. Like, I was dying. And that she'd not seen anything that far advanced and has had someone survive it. And she was just like, you know, tears in her eyes. It could have been so different.
Yeah.
And so I was obviously in the hospital for a couple days. I had barely any blood left. I needed to,
Right.
you know, get that going for me. And before they discharge you, they sit you down and they say, you know, whether you just given birth or whether you've just undergone something like that, they talk you through your fertility options in the future. Super tactful.
Mm-hmm.
They have to do it. And they say to me, you know, we just want you to know you're down to 1 tube now. Probably not going to get pregnant again. And unless you know, take some fertility drugs or pursue other options. And I'm like, okay, well, I just went through like the most traumatic near-death experience I've had, so I'm not really thinking about that right now. But it was definitely like, dang, is this part of my life over?
Right.
And I looked at Jack, my husband, who's sitting there next to me. I can only imagine. I would love to hear him tell his side of the story at some point, just without me interrupting him. Just listen. Because I can only imagine from his perspective what that must have been like. But he was there, and I looked at him and I said, I don't want this to be the way this part of our story ends. And he was like, let's get you home. You know? So we go on with our life. 6 months go by, and give or take, and we're in the mountains in North Georgia with our kids and our family for Thanksgiving, and I'm feeling really strange. Feeling really weird. And I say to Jack, I know that it's not possible for me to be pregnant. But how many kids do I have, Jason?
Yeah.
So I say to Jack, I think I need to get a pregnancy test. And he goes, listen, I know you've been through a lot, but I really don't think you need to put yourself through that. I was like, I don't know, man. I don't think it's the curvy roads up here. I feel strange. He goes, okay, sure. Gets me a 3-pack of tests. Took all 3 of them. Was pregnant with our son, Heath.
Wow.
And that experience was the beginning of where I am now in my life. Like, that was that whole year, really, but that experience, which is tucked in, like you said, it's in the 2nd verse of this song.
Yeah.
It's tucked in there.
It is.
You could miss it if you're not paying attention.
Yeah.
It changed me, and it changed me in a way that isn't like, you hear so many, you know, different people, they'll talk about near-death experiences like I had a vision, or, you know, they see things, or they, you know, it's something really like earth-shattering. For me, it was I woke up and I was breathing, and I could breathe. And the breath was the thing that kind of, I was laying in the hospital bed breathing. I can still feel those sheets under my body. And I said, okay, I have to be myself now. That was the beginning of letting go of a lot of the framework of my life that I had constructed around myself, or that the culture had constructed around me, that was not authentic and not what I was made to do or made to be. Mm-hmm. And so I lived that story that year, and, you know, it didn't lead straight to anything other than being more awake.
Yeah.
I was more present, more awake.
We're in Florida. You can't say that.
Right. Okay. Okay. But so that
Shiloh.
It's the neighbor's fault.
I know.
Thanks for letting me share this.
Oh man, thank you for sharing it.
I hope it helps somebody.
I do too.
Oh. Where were we?
Well, we were talking about Van Plating's gone woke. We were talking about how it was an awakening for you,
yes,
and how it was the beginning of an awakening, and that's not the kind of thing that you snap your fingers and you go, I now need to have a solo career,
right?
Or all the things that have followed since.
Yeah.
But it's those kind of pivotal moments in our lives, and yours was especially impactful. But you're talking about that moment and how it sort of like was an awakening for you. Yeah,
it made me question a lot of things that I was carrying around with me, a lot of things I thought about what my place was in the world. And you and I have talked about this kind of stuff, just both growing up in the South and, you know,
the church,
and that sort of Reagan era evangelicism that I grew up in. And, you know, I had already been shedding some of that stuff, but I think that experience really woke me up to more of what the truth was, and that is that I'm a whole human being
Mm-hmm.
just because I'm here, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and that I don't have to be a perfect mom, whatever that even means, or a
Mm-hmm.
perfect wife. Like, a better way to say that what I'm trying to say would be this. My value as a human woman is not determined by my roles or my relationship to other people.
Mm-hmm.
I get one shot at this thing, being
Mhm.
alive.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of trying to do my best to fit into what I think I'm supposed to do, I need to just be myself
Yeah.
and love people well and love what I'm made to be well. And that was the beginning of this. Yeah, for sure.
Oh my gosh, I hope somebody hears this and listens to that song and has a similar feeling. That's not an easy realization
Mm-mm.
to come to, especially after years and years of messages that say something
Mm-mm.
very different.
It causes you to challenge the whole framework that you've lived under,
Yeah.
and that is not easy because it causes friction in relationships that you care
Yeah.
about. You know?
Yeah, this is, I mean, I'm interested in, I want to frame this without us just going overtly too political with this.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
But you know what
I
I
want to
mean.
be gracious, and I know what you mean.
Yeah. And it's like, because I think, I mean, 3 of your 4 kids are girls
Mm-hmm.
and in Florida,
Yeah, I know.
you know, and you had gone through that,
Mm-hmm.
and that would be a different equation for those doctors right now.
Yes, it would. I have thought about that and thought about that and thought about that. I wouldn't be here if there had been more hoops for those doctors to jump through to save my life. And I'm a woman of faith.
I know.
And I say that with all honesty.
Yeah.
I have so much grace for people who are trying their best to do what they think is right. I have very little grace for people who can minimize the worth of a mother. You know?
Yeah.
Because my kids wouldn't have a mother.
Yeah.
There's a lot more nuance than people tend to think.
Yeah.
And I hope that, you know, my hope as a human and as an artist and as a woman is that songs like this one and songs that Amanda Shires writes and songs that my other peers put out, like, can kind of help soften that and help people see the whole picture of what this means. All of it.
Yeah.
You know, and hopefully have some grace and realize, like, it's not politicizing life and death like that is not okay.
Right.
And mothers matter and women matter. So do babies. But women matter.
Yeah.
Women matter.
It's both.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Women matter.
Yeah. Do you, when you write a song like that and now it's out in the world,
Mm-hmm.
and now this deeper dive into it
Mhm.
is going to be out in the world,
Mm-hmm.
I would say most people who listen to your music are probably like-minded in a lot of ways.
Right.
But, you know, you make country music of a sort.
Right. Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, like, how do you prepare yourself for any potential pushback or
For being honest.
for
yeah,
being,
I
yeah,
don't know.
like,
That's a great question, and that's one I don't really have an answer for. I don't know. I do know that I have to be honest. That's what I know. I have to be honest, and I can't call my experience and diminish it.
yeah.
You know, like
yeah.
they had to terminate my pregnancy in order to save my life.
Right.
The baby was not viable. It was blown into bits. I mean, I know that's graphic, but it's true.
I think it's helpful, though. I mean, as hard as it is to
Yeah.
say, like, that's a really helpful thing
Yeah.
when having these conversations.
And women are not monsters who walk around just casually thinking, you know,
Yeah.
it's. So I don't know. I don't know how to prepare for that. I hope, God, you know, you can hope that your story falls on kind ears. I know that some of them won't be. And I just hope that the people who don't understand what I'm saying can at least say, you know what, that wasn't my experience. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe ask me in a few months.
Yeah.
You know?
I'd love to follow up and, you know.
I think that if we don't talk about it and like, you know,
But I also think you have, you have talked about this in other spaces.
I definitely have.
It's not like this is the first time you're uttering this,
no,
right? So
I
you've
know.
talked about this in other spaces.
It's not the first time. It's not the first time. And it does get easier to tell that story. The more I make myself vulnerable, the more I can tell it. But I have been so fortunate for it to fall on ears who wanted to understand.
Yeah.
You know, and so I don't know. I also have to be careful to like protect myself and protect my heart.
Yeah.
And protect my kids.
Yeah.
And you know, I do live in the South, and I love that, and I love it here.
Mm-hmm.
But it does mean that some of these conversations will be harder, and you know, I guess I can just be hopefully cautiously optimistic that hopefully, I'll say this, to me it's worth the sacrifice of sharing this if it helps one other woman feel seen and not alone and not alienated, you know.
Yeah.
And like ashamed of something that she had no control over.
Mm-hmm.
That's my prayer, you know, is that it can help. So that's why I'm willing to talk about it, and I hope that it is helpful. I don't want to get nobody wants to get dragged or
Sure,
you know, beat up for what they're saying, especially when it's like a lived story, a lived experience, but I just can't control it. So I don't know. We'll see.
I just think, because again, I expect more ears will be on this record than in the past, you know, and so like that may bring in people who, because it does have a universal appeal.
Mm-hmm.
These are great songs,
Thank you.
they're great songs that feel like they could be consumed by folks outside of the group of people who are already your rabid fans. You already have a lot of us who love your music and are going to come to the table regardless, but you're bringing more people to the table. And, you know, when that happens, I'm just really interested in the idea of how you navigate it. Because, I mean, I think about it too, like, not to compare at all what I do to what you do, other than just the idea of like, sometimes as new people are listening,
mm-hmm.
I think about old stuff I said.
Oh, for sure.
You know
for
what
sure.
I mean? And because also my attitudes and beliefs, and they change.
Yeah,
they
it's
grow.
always changing. Hopefully.
Right.
Hopefully we're always growing. Hopefully we're changing. Hopefully I can just, you know, we both, you know, when you're in a public facing role, hopefully you can just do your best to navigate it humbly.
Yeah.
And ask questions. Yeah. You know?
Absolutely.
Ask questions of them.
Uh-huh.
Let them ask questions of me, and know that like nobody can ask me anything that invalidates my experience, because it was real.
Right.
And I lived it.
That's a great point.
And I can put boundaries up if I need to.
Yeah.
You know?
That's a great point. The ability to tie it back to your lived experience rather than it being some sort of theoretical or hypothetical. It's very real.
Right.
And so you're not speaking from a place of like, this is what you should do or believe, or this is what you should know about the thing.
Right.
You lived the thing.
Right.
And this is how you feel about it. Right. And this is what you know to be true about it, because you've been there.
Right.
That's a really powerful way of having those conversations.
Yeah. And just knowing that I've been in the place that they are.
Yeah.
And thankfully I've been blessed to be able to grow through it with a lot of learning.
Yeah.
And people have been kind and patient with me.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing all of that.
Thanks for offering a safe space to talk about that stuff.
I'm grateful.
I knew it was coming.
Yeah.
And I was hoping it would be in an environment that felt safe.
I'm grateful that this is just for a second. Everybody bear with us. We're just gonna talk about how much I appreciate Van's friendship. But I'm grateful. I'm grateful that this is a safe space. Mm-hmm. That is obviously intentional on my part, mm-hmm. and I'm grateful that it is. But I'm also really grateful for, you know, we had dinner earlier, and it was a I open up a lot,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Mhm.
and I needed to, and I needed your counsel specifically.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that I'm going to tie this back to the art, which is, I think it is those qualities about you, the fact that you do, the subtext there
Mm-hmm.
of all of this is that you lead with empathy.
Mm-hmm.
You're not judgmental.
Mm-hmm.
You are, you have that rare quality of being sort of very decisive, not sort of, in fact, decisive,
Mm-hmm.
but also non-judgmental. And I feel like a lot of times those two things, right? It's like
Yeah.
a lot of people are in fact decisive, but it comes from a place of like, I know what's best.
Right.
And that's not you personally and artistically. Doesn't seem like that's how you operate.
No. I have this sort of internal thing that I've tried to learn to listen to. And I think I get better at it the older I get.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, maybe by the time I'm 100, I'll be like so zen and I'll be like a Jedi of following this. There's this internal, like when I said to you a few minutes ago where I was like, I have to be honest.
Yeah.
It's not I'm compelled because it's right to be honest. I literally, there's something in me that's like, that's all I can do. Like I really can't not say it. Do you know what I mean?
I do, yeah.
My dad always used to say, because of that, I'm brutally honest.
Yeah.
Because I would inadvertently in family situations say the wrong thing because I thought I was supposed to tell the truth. You know, and it's like, no. No, that's the opposite. This is not that time. I'm like, oh, you know, and so that's like, it's literally a for better or worse thing. But
seems like you've honed that skill.
I'm working on it. Still working on it.
Yeah.
But thank you for seeing that in me. That means a lot.
For sure. Sorry, I'm double checking the time. We've been talking an hour.
That doesn't surprise me.
It doesn't surprise me either, but it kind of does. Like, golly, that was a quick hour. So I don't want to go too much longer because I feel like we could do this forever.
Right.
And I want folks to get their ears on the record
Yeah.
and to get to it. But like, there's a couple other. I mean, the whole song, the whole record, is very personal. And again, that ability to take these sort of very deeply personal things, some of which are very unpleasant,
Right.
and to then turn them into bangers is
Right.
incredible.
Thank you.
I don't know how much you want to tell about the story of Big Time Small Shot, but
Look at you. You go straight for the two most uncomfortable songs. I love it. I love it. Yeah. No, go for it.
But what I am interested in, especially with that, and
Yeah.
please feel free to, again, safe space.
Yeah.
But what I'm interested in about that song is like the decision to write that down and then to include it on the record.
It's the best practical joke I've ever pulled off in my whole life.
Can you talk about that decision-making process and, include however much you want to include about the story?
Yes.
And that?
Okay. So that song is word for word exactly how it happened. I'm not going to say who it's about because, like I say in the song, that person loves attention.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not going to give them that attention. Listen to me, so empathetic. Now it's all revenge. I wasn't going to write this song. It had been floating in my brain because I was pissed off. And if you read the lyrics of this song, you'll get that.
You'll get why.
Pissed
real
off.
quick.
And I had decided, you know what? I'm not going to write this song. I'm going to be mature and move on. And then I got on Twitter. And a gal I know was tweeting about the very damn same scenario.
With the same guy?
Different guy.
Oh, okay.
Different guy. And then all these other gals were hopping in, and they all had this common experience. It's the same, not the same dude, but it's the same dude.
Yeah.
And I was like, fuck it. I'm writing this song.
Oh, wow. I don't think I remember that.
I might not have even told you that.
Yeah. Or man, that makes me wonder about my algorithm that it wasn't coming my way, though, also, because I see most of your stuff. And
Yeah.
it's like,
I don't know. This must have been, I think I wrote it last summer.
Okay.
I'll tell you once we're not taping.
Okay.
Who was on that thread, and
Okay.
that'll make you laugh even harder.
Yeah.
But yeah, and so she then DM'd me, the gal that had initiated the thread that convinced me I should just go ahead and write the song. And I was like, man, I just can't believe how much this happens to women. This same scenario in different people's lives. It just happens over and over and over. And it shouldn't.
Yeah.
And it's so fucked up and stupid.
It's really stupid.
It's so stupid.
Yeah.
And so I just sat down. I sat down on the bed at the cabin where we were, and I wrote the whole thing.
Yeah.
And then I couldn't stop laughing. And Jack came in, and he was like, "What are you doing in here?" And I played him the song, and he was like, "You're not going to record that, are you?" And I was like, at the time, I was like, it's kind of a joke song. I'm probably not going to record it. But then I started touring again. And every time I play that song live, it brings down the house.
Yeah.
Women are hollering. Men are going, oh! Like, it's the most fun song to play in a bar because no one expects you to sing shit until you do.
Right.
And it's like a big one, you know, shit talking, man.
Yeah.
So loud. And people are just invested in it. And I was like, I think it's got to go on the record. It's got to go on the record. I guess I got to figure out how this makes sense on the record.
Yeah.
And so I did. And I even riffed on the person who inspired its aesthetic at the time, which is why it's got the Tennessee 3 kind of sound going. You know, the layers to it are it's very Nashville by way of the Rolling Stones kind of. I told my friend Scotty Murray, who played steel on it, to play stuff that would get you fired from a Nashville gig. That's why it's so squirrely.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. And then Will Payne Harrison played the electric guitar on that song.
Okay.
And they didn't hear each other's parts. They both tracked at the same time in different places and then sent me stuff, and then I put it all together and edited it so that it's like loosely controlled chaos, that song. And it's supposed to feel like that.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, that makes so much sense.
Yeah. And it just, the song cracks me up. I can never not laugh. And then Boys Club for Girls came in and sang all the backing vocals. Well, not all of them, but a lot of the backing vocals on the song, and just kind of made it even more explosive. They're up in Nashville as well. Super cool girls. But yeah, the story is word for word exactly what happened. If you get the album, read the lyrics, it definitely did happen. And the reason I didn't shy away from any of the details is because I felt like it just tells too good, just like it is.
Yeah.
It tells like an old Johnny and June song would.
Yeah.
And that's part of my lexicon that I grew up with. You know, I grew up on country music.
Right.
Like, don't test me on country music playing. Yeah. Like, I can do that.
Right,
you know?
right.
And I remember when I sent the demo of this song to Will, he was like, have you always had this? I was like, oh, this I can do easy. The indie girl thing I was actually trying, but this I could do all day long, you know, the spoken word and he was like, you have been holding out on us big time. I was like, I didn't know I was good at this and would enjoy it, you know?
Yeah.
So that part of the aesthetic part was really just coming home to what I already, like, I've always been able to do that stuff. I just decided to do it.
You know, I know this happens, but obviously, and especially in a post-COVID world, but like, I mean, post the start of COVID world, the idea of Will and what was the other guy's name? I don't want to leave him out.
Scotty Murray.
Scotty Murray. So Will Payne Harrison and Scotty Murray tracking at the same time, but not hearing each other's parts.
Right.
Like, I know that's not a new phenomenon, and that it's been like accelerated in a COVID world and in an internet world. But how, like, as a producer and writer of a record, would you prefer that they would have had a chance if it was possible?
Well, so for that song, that was a really risky move. It's a risky move in general. Usually, you know, when I'm layering an arrangement, I definitely want certain things to come before other things.
Yeah.
And those two instruments are treated like lead instruments in this song. So a person who was more concerned about controlling the environment would have done one at a time.
Mm-hmm.
But I really just wanted to see, you know? I just wanted to see what it would do.
Yeah.
And then when I heard it, there is no way they would have both played out as much as they did if they'd been able to hear the other guy. That awesome chaos that happens where they're dancing around each other in the bridge, that never would have happened. It would have been neater, tidier, more controlled. I didn't want that song to sound controlled. I wanted it to sound like it was about to boil over the whole time.
Oh, and it does.
And it does.
Oh my
gosh. So
gosh.
production goes a lot far, like the idea of directing this kind of thing goes way beyond those parts. It's all about like creating that environment and like the layering, when you're going to layer, you know, what the other person hears. Like, yeah, and it worked. Thank God it worked.
Yeah, it worked. It worked beautifully. So the whole thing works beautifully. And I'm just so proud of you.
Thank you.
So like grateful for your time and energy again to do this, and I'm stoked for people to hear this record.
Me too.
It is a huge step up. It is, and it's instantly, and I got to listen to it, you know, Perks of the Jab. I got to listen to it a while back and immediately texted you.
Yeah.
You know, because it hit me immediately. For folks listening, because I think this is kind of helpful to understand how powerful this record was. I had an especially difficult day when you sent me that record. I put it in my ears, and I walked to get lunch, and as soon as I got to the lunch place, it finished, and I just was like, immediately grabbed my phone to text you. Just like what you got from me was like, that was my gut. No edited me. No me trying to write a review or whatever. Right. You know, like me just pouring out, not that I'm not honest in reviews, but just pouring out, this is my gut feeling about this thing that is so beautiful and so expertly done.
Thank you.
And I'm just so excited for you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And don't forget, we end on what you're getting down on. So what art has you fired up at the moment, Van Plating?
All right, let me think. I was just listening to... Man, I've been going through...
I feel like last time you were listening to like Swedish death metal or something. I forget.
That wouldn't surprise me if I was, honestly. Man, what am I getting down on? Oh, hold on. Let me make sure I say this band's name right.
Okay.
So, do you know Tammy Nielsen?
I know that name.
Beautiful artist from New Zealand, and her brother Jay plays guitar for her. So he's a fellow petty nerd.
Okay.
And he texted me this band, and I have been listening to them nonstop yesterday and today, and I want to make sure I don't say their name wrong.
Cool.
Because it's a new band to me. They're not a new band. The album I'm enjoying, it's called Blitzen Trapper. I'd never heard of them. And the album that he sent me first is from 2008, so it's been around a long time. But yeah, I didn't know about them, and I'm like, all in.
My friend, I think it's on my Patreon.
Yeah?
I'm pretty sure I released this on Patreon, but Earle is the principal songwriter and lead singer for Blitzen Trapper. And I've been a fan since 2007 or something, right? I interviewed him.
How did I miss this?
Because
and this band.
I don't know how you missed the band. The reason you missed the interview was because we did a phoner, and a little insider baseball for folks, but I like telling this story again because it's just like, sometimes the recording doesn't work out.
Right.
So we did a phoner.
Yeah.
And the first 15 minutes of the interview are great. And then you just can't hear him anymore.
Oh, gosh.
So like something, because there's a program that I hate doing phoners.
Yeah.
Just because there's too many things can go wrong.
Right.
Like I like doing face-to-face.
Right.
By far is the best.
Right.
If we have to do it remote, I'm grateful we have that technology.
Right.
I like Zoom because it does all the work for me.
Right.
Right.
Totally.
Like, I know a lot of podcasters prefer to use different platforms because the sound quality is better or whatever.
Right.
But Zoom will record 2 tracks for me.
Mm-hmm.
So if I need to do any editing, light editing,
Right.
I can do that. And I know it's going to be there. And it's out in the cloud somewhere if it's not on my computer.
Right.
Like, I'm not going to lose it. But
Right.
phoners,
Yeah.
I use a program, and that program sometimes just shits on me. Just craps out. And so I interviewed Eric Earle right when Holy Smokes Future Jokes came out, that record.
It's a great record. I discovered it this morning.
It's a great record. and we talked about, so the record, how much do you know about it before
I've discovered them yesterday.
Okay. So that record was inspired by him reading George Saunders' novel Lincoln in the Bardo.
Oh, whoa.
Which I got into because Jason Isbell was talking about it. And it's just a whirlwind of a book, right? And it all takes place in a graveyard in one night. And it has to do with Abraham Lincoln's death. And it's just like that man's brain. Right. Eric Earle's brain is just, and he's I don't know if he's still doing it because I know they're on tour right now. Because they kind of took a little bit of a hiatus, then they made that record. Didn't really tour it much. It was kind of right in the middle of COVID. And now they're doing a little bit of light touring. I don't think they're getting anywhere near us, but if they do,
let me know.
We got to do that.
Yeah.
But he's also just like a prince of a man. He's a social worker.
Oh,
you know, he's just like this great. So I have 15 minutes of that interview, which I posted, I think, on Patreon. And then it just, all of a sudden, you can only hear me.
Oh,
I know.
Heartbreaking.
I know. So I'm glad you got into Blitz and Trapper, though.
I'm on my way to becoming a super fan.
They're awesome. They're great live, too. Chris and I went to Jackrabbits in Jacksonville and saw them in, like, 2015.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm listening to the writing, like, which of these tricks am I going to rip off on my next session, and when can I co-write with this guy? Because I am into it.
Yeah.
So into it. So cool.
It is so cool.
Great. Like, it's you don't often find writers that can be that unconventional and that catchy.
Yep.
And that observant. All in the same song.
Yeah, that's perfectly said.
Yeah.
Yep. That Holy Smokes Future Jokes record is very much that. I found a copy the other day at Park Ave CDs. I think I found it with like the splatter vinyl, and it was in like the used $5 section or whatever.
Oh my gosh.
I know, it was just such one of those magical finds.
Yeah.
You know. So I've got it on vinyl. Well, my friend, again, thank you. This is an all-timer, and thank you so much for being so honest and open as you always are.
Thanks for having me back.
It's just, Van Plating, y'all. Thank you so much, Van. Thank all of you for listening. The song you're hearing in this episode is They're Gonna Kill You Anyway from her brilliant new album, Orange Blossom Child, which will be released everywhere on September 15th, 2023. vanplating.com to grab yourself a physical copy. Also, keep up with her tour dates. She's going to be in Nashville at Americana Fest this year. So if you're going to be there, do not miss Van Plating live. She's incredible live, in addition to being such a great songwriter and producer. MarinadePodcast.com for all things The Marinade. Follow us on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Reddit, Spoutable, Twitter, Blue Sky, Mastodon. We're on all the things. Subscribe and give us a 5-star rating on your podcast app. Tell a friend about the show. These are all free ways to support The Marinade. Please go do that right now while you're listening if you haven't already. It makes a big difference for us and costs so little of your time. If you like what we're doing and you can swing it, please consider joining our Patreon community. Just $2 a month, y'all. You can gain access to Patreon-exclusive content like our show Jason's Journey, where I talk about the moments that shape my creative life and provide a window into the making of The Marinade. You can now try a free trial of Patreon to see if you like it. No pressure. Try it for 7 days. Set a reminder on your phone in case you want to cancel, and keep going if you dig it. The last time Van and I talked, I actually released a whole separate conversation with her on Patreon. So you can access that for just $2 a month. If you want to support the show and you don't want to commit to a monthly subscription on Patreon, I totally get that. You can Venmo or PayPal us. Just search the Marinade and you'll see a picture of my face, and you can donate whatever you feel comfortable donating. We're just so grateful, everybody, for everyone who supports the show. Thank you so much for listening, for spreading the word, for providing these opportunities to interview these incredible people like Van Plating. Until next time, go out and create something. Cheers, y'all.